I'll go.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Hey, bro, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing good, man. How's the recovery going?
It's going pretty well. You never want anything, significant injuries to happen, but it's a testament to the lifestyle we live. Because basically, I'm cutting the recovery time in half. So, uh,
I think
eating protein.
being fit beforehand probably makes a huge difference, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, big time. I mean, being in good shape. Already having the habits in place that you need. Eating, lean proteins, having a good basis of muscular strength and endurance, prioritizing sleep and recovery. A lot of times, at least, according to my physical therapist, a lot of times people don't have those in place already. So it just kind of, works against them. So doing that. And then I'm super adherent to the process. They tell me, do this 3 times a day. I'm on it 3 times a day. I'm going to get it done.
I believe it 100%.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate you joining me, man. Especially within what I hit you up like a week ago when you're getting this together. So I have a list of questions that we can run through for this interview. But if we go in another direction, I'm fine with it too. I just want people to learn from you, and yeah, let's get started. So, let's talk about your journey. Like, what got you into fitness and bodybuilding specifically too?
Yeah, so my biggest draw into it initially was mental health focus. Um, I don't know if you've seen some of my old pictures, but I was pretty heavy at one point. Um, lifelong athlete and into different activities, primarily American football, but I played basketball growing up, all kinds of sports. But about 12, 13 years ago, I found myself not in the best of shape mentally, and then that manifested physically. So I got, some signs to get my butt into the gym and to start doing better, eating better. And then it kind of, in the best way possible, it snowballed. Every workout, every, principle I learned seemed to have this really positive, feedback loop kind of started. And so it just kind of started from there and improving my mental health, and then physical health got better, and then it just started supporting each other. So, um, a decade and a half later, we're deep in it now.
Yeah, awesome. Well, people know that you're both an athlete and a coach. So, what inspired that? What kind of drove you in that direction?
Initially, I sought out to improve my own mental health and everything, but I've always been kind of hardwired to work with others. In football, I was always looked at as a captain. When I was in college, I was a RA in the dorms. I've always been like kind of a peer mentor of some sort in every kind of step. And it's just kind of my desire is to take whatever skills and traits and principles I learn and to try to positively impact the lives of others with them. And pretty early on in my bodybuilding foray, people started reaching out, asking, if I coached or whatever. And I was already doing in personal training. So I didn't coach any competitors, my first several years because I didn't feel fit or equipped. And then by year 5 or so of 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 getting into that, uh, I felt a lot more prepared to, you know, take on some clients. And I don't have a huge roster, but I have several folks who'll be hitting the stage probably next year. But I've put several people on stage already. So it kind of went along with my own personal journey.
That's awesome. So, how long have you been bodybuilding specifically? In even without competing, just how long have you been bodybuilding?
Yeah. So the special milestone for me was going to be next summer. And that was why I was really kind of bummed I can't compete probably next year. But I have been competing officially 10 years next summer. So 9 years this summer. Um, and kind of living the lifestyle for about 11 years or so.
Okay. Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about coaching specifically. In your opinion, what separates an average coach from a great coach?
Man, I think there are lots of things, but one of the main differences I think is someone who goes beyond the X's and O's, who considers how is this going to affect a person's ability to, deal with their day-to-day life. Um, and it shows a level of care beyond just the competitive outcome. Um, it's it's not rocket science to get in good shape, but it is absolutely an art and science to get in great shape, to do so reasonably mentally intact. We can argue, that nobody makes it to stage completely with it, but then doing so in a way that doesn't burn the bridges of all your relationships, right? And I think a great coach is someone who approaches the individual as a whole individual and not just someone who tracks macros and logs their training. Um, somebody who considers the athlete a person and addressing each aspect of it. We're not, mental health counselors or anything like that, but we have to um, take care with the people that trust us enough to guide them to the stage. And I think a great coach takes that very, very seriously. And I've been so fortunate to work with and get mentors as great coaches, and all of them have done that so well. They're just beyond anything. They're just remarkable human beings. And I have to shout out both Brian Miner and Brandon Kempter because those are probably my two biggest direct influences, and both are brilliant. They're science minds, they're X's and O's, but they're just remarkable human beings. And that's the trait from them that I wanted to, really use in my own practice the most.
Okay. So I mean, it sounds like your experience with really your coaches is what guided you. Um, would you say that your experience as an athlete also carries over to how you treat your athletes?
100%. You know, we it is very difficult to prescribe things in principle, not necessarily like individual specific things, but to recommend practices that we haven't felt the effects of ourselves. It's it's like I see some coaches who've never really gotten in true stage shape.
Mhm.
Um, and that's not a knock against anybody, but I would have trouble as an athlete taking the advice of somebody who's never been there. Getting inside out lean, or at least to like striated glutes levels is remarkably difficult. And the cognitive function decline and the relative energy deficiency syndrome and all of the pieces that go with it, it's not for the faint of heart. And it's something that the decisions I make as a coach are going to be kind of always what I think is best for the athlete and for the outcome. But there's the empathy that underlies it all, because I've been there. So even if we have to make a harsh cut, it's like, hey man, I know this one's gonna suck because I've been there. But hey, you still got to get it done, right? Um, so being an athlete definitely informs coaching decisions, because when you have to make that decision about something that's going to really, you know, uh, be a cost that has to be paid, you personally know that cost, or at least can relate to it.
Yeah. So there has to be a balance to all of this, right? So, as far as you educating your clients, keeping them accountable, and still being empathetic, how exactly do you approach that?
Well, I think the big key that you mentioned there is education. It's like at least in my own experience with coaches, is like they don't leave you with nothing, right? They don't just tell you what to do. They give you principles that can be applied to a lot of different things, right? And so what I try to do is not just, all right, here's peak week, here's, cardio, here's hydration, here are macros. Here are the reasons why we do those things. Because the deeper level understanding that a person has, usually it leads to better adherence because they kind of know the reason why, they're going through what they're going through. Um, and so that's the biggest piece, at least for me personally, is really not just dictating what a client does, but letting them be a part of the process, and for there to be an educational component to it and for it to be a partnership, right? There are times where I may not want to be as assertive, but if an athlete is very seasoned and they've been down this road before and they know, like, look, man, I know, that it takes this cut at this point to drop the next 2 pounds. Um, I'm going to be open to that, right? Because it's very much a partnership, and there's got to be give and take, and there's got to be communication on both sides. And so communicating, letting everybody have a say in the process, and then educating as best we can.
Yeah, I love that. So let's get into some of the red flags in the industry and things for people to look out for. Are there any specific trends that you're aware of that people should look out for in the industry?
As far as like, I will admit that I get a bit of bias in who I follow on social media because I don't test the waters of the fitness space like in totality because I don't care for it.
Yeah.
So I tend to gravitate to, the evidence-based kind of side of things. And I mean, perfectly honestly, like I've got a much deeper tie to the natural bodybuilding community than our enhanced brothers and sisters. Have great respect for it. I just don't have, as deep of a connection to it.
Sure.
Um, so like specific trends, um, mm, hard to say, but I think one of the big red flags is coaches who use like really extremely specific practices that guarantee an outcome. Like I've heard of coaches like, okay, I want you to triple your creatine, you know,
Mhm.
because you're really trying to grow in this growth phase. And so of course creatine is good, so more of it is better, right?
Mhm.
And making these like really bold steps and claims that just aren't founded on anything. And there's some even bro science that has merit, right? Like there's just some stuff that we haven't put a title on scientifically yet that are perfectly valid.
For sure.
But, when I see people still saying like, "Hey, I want you to have a fifth of vodka or, a ounce of vodka before getting on stage to drive you out," and all these, kind of things that people don't understand, real mechanistic things. I hate
Mhm.
butching practices like that because if I'm responsible for your outcome, if I don't really understand the mechanisms behind the strategies that I'm employing, why am I employing them? Why am I going to you with such certainty because you place trust in me? So that's kind of, I guess, the my old man rant at the clouds is coaches who don't really understand um, what they're prescribing and the mechanism behind it, and they're just kind of going off of either their own personal experience or bodybuilding lore and legend, right? Versus,
Yeah.
hey, there are some things that have merit, there's some things that don't. Let's get to the mechanism or at least understand a rudimentary level of what, is underneath it all, and then make a decision based on that.
Makes sense. So a more specific question would be, what are common mistakes that athletes and clients make when they're choosing a coach? Something you've noticed personally.
They base it on Popularity, right? There's a coach locally here that I won't name, but is just of questionable character, but immensely, immensely popular. And even when, others have lobbied, complaints or qualms against that person, because that person's popular, people hire them, without any interruption, right? So popularity is a big one. Basing it on an individual coach's competitive success, right? Just because somebody has won worlds doesn't mean they can tell you how to win worlds.
Yeah.
Um, Now, I think that that has some value, but making a decision based on that, or just a coach's track record in general, um, can be, problematic, because some coaches handpick their clients, and they're not working with, average genetic Joe. They're working with monsters all the time.
They chase the genetically gifted.
Absolutely, so then you're like, yeah, like it looks to be like their method just works, right?
Mhm.
And that's not always the case. You take somebody like Brandon Kempter, who has some genetic freaks for sure, but then you see people with what we would probably consider more average genetics still look phenomenal. You know what I mean? He really brings out their best. And it's like that's the hallmark of a really great coach. Is not what they do with the monsters, but making kind of everybody look like a monster. Like that's a skill that I don't think everybody has.
Yeah. So we know that what a client should look out for specifically. But as far as finding a coach, what is a good method for somebody to go about finding somebody who aligns with them, especially for beginners? Because people who are experienced, obviously, you probably hit a lot of those roadblocks and force yourself to learn a specific thing about yourself, and you kind of have a better direction of where to go. But for those people who are just entering the sport and have no real guidance at all, other than maybe some random influencer that they're following, how would you advise them?
Reaching out to people that have used this coach before, I think is great to see what their experience is like. And I'm sure people will ask, well, how much do they cost and things like that. But
Hmm.
I think it's really valuable to see, like, hey, what was your experience like with this person? Did they, get back to you in a timely manner on peak week? Did they, make decisions that were um, helpful in you considering, that bodybuilding is a part of your life and your life isn't bodybuilding, right? So reaching out to other competitors who've used coaches, um, and then to look at, go through the Rolodex of shows and see like, okay, I'm seeing, this coach really only coaches people in this certain federation or something like that. Like that strange associations like that to me are a little bizarre and they're kind of a red flag. So like if somebody only coaches people in one specific federation or one specific show, that makes me a little leery. So,
Yeah.
taking a look at their track record and seeing like, oh man, they got people competing all over the world, all over different federations. Um, it definitely, helps you make a more informed decision.
No, I agree with that totally, and that is something I've definitely noticed out there. So, once you've hired a coach and you're going through the process and things happen, I don't know, roadblocks, issues with your coach, how would you approach holding them accountable and having those conversations with them?
Yeah, I mean, the best coaches I've had and know establish at the beginning that channel of communication, right? Um, and then they establish what is for them the appropriate channels and level of communication and all of that. And they just establish kind of the boundaries and baseline. So then you kind of know from the jump, okay, this is what I can expect of this person. And of course, you have to give grace because we're all human. But then if a person's not kind of living to their own standard of communication and their own barometer, then there has to be a conversation. Um, so, that good coach will have established it. And then hopefully just stuck to it, plus or minus, so to speak. But if things veer off track pretty drastically, it's a serious conversation. I mean, I can't tell you how many people, not necessarily that I worked with, but that I know that they were, 8 weeks, 6 weeks, even like 2 weeks out, and their coach ghosted them. They gave them their little 12-week diet, their 12-week plan, and there wasn't really any communication outside of that.
Yeah.
So, it's a two-way street. The coach holds the client accountable and to the standard, and it goes both ways. The client, like, it's a service that they're, using their hard-earned money for. So we can't take that lightly. And so they're due a certain level of respect and a certain level of communication. And they just have to, the coach and client just have to agree on what that is.
With you. So let's get into you a little bit now. Um, what are some of your personal goals as an athlete and coach in the coming years?
Um, things on the coaching front, um, I'm looking forward to getting uh, some folks that have been kind of in the pipeline for some time back on stage. Um, I mean, I love off season, and I love uh, helping, because that's really where the progress is made. But I'm just looking forward to getting them back on stage to so that everyone can just see how great they are, because I get to see all the work they put in quietly. And I usually work with people who are very humble and aren't super social media, like hungry for attention and stuff like that. Um, and so people just don't know. It's like, man, it's like I want people to know, like, you've got the capability to go make some noise at these big shows. So I'm excited to get some people back on stage. And I mean, for me, I'm just looking forward to recovering. And like I said, I wanted to get on stage in 2026. It is not entirely out of the realm of possibility, but it's going to be pretty difficult to both recover, you know, get completely healed up, and then try to make even more improvements before prepping and getting on stage all in that short amount of time. So very unlikely. So 2027 is looking to be more appropriate. And the goal always remains the same, personally, like bringing the best version of myself. Obviously, some pretty specific attention to lower body with a, you know, pretty significant lower body injury. But I want to uh, exceed conditioning levels from, previous years, and just bring a better package of total. Seeing some clips from the Jordan Cup today got me a little fired up. Because those guys and gals are huge and they're shredded, and so it's like, okay, we're gonna have to really bring something special in a couple years, because I really want to mix it up at the highest level. WNBF Worlds, Jordan Cup, Mr. America, all of it. And
And you got the potential for it. Let's
oh,
be very sure, very 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 clear. And for people who are listening that don't know, I met Malcolm at the WNBF Universe Pro Universe. Is that what they call it in New York in 2023? And I mean, it was such an eye opening experience because I mean, Malcolm, he looked statuesque and proportional, and he looked huge. I mean, and then when I talked to him, he gave me his body weight. I was just blown away. I was like, "What?" It's like, what is happening here?
yeah. Well, and natural bodybuilding is always deceiving, man. You go back and look at some of the all-time greats like Brian Whitaker, and you talk about somebody who's 160 pounds on stage, but looks, you know, 190, 200, like just so
Mhm.
dense and so well, so much symmetry. I, I have fun conversations with people who don't know, specifically about natural bodybuilding. And they say, well, what do you get on stage at? And I'm like, somewhere between 170 and 175. And with potential for, to be 170, 168, maybe even, like to get a hair leaner. And they're like, how? Like, that's so small. I'm like, I mean,
Mhm.
look, it's all smoke and mirrors. What the weight says on the scale, I don't really care. It's all about what it looks like up there. It doesn't matter what body fat percentage readings I'm getting, what the scale weight is. Like, if it, if Brandon told me, we need to get to 165 to be diced, full, hard, and competitive in a world champion lineup, let's do it. I don't care. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, it's interesting, man, and that's why I've gravitated towards the sport so much.
Well, and we all can't be monsters like you, getting on stage 200 pounds and just being mass monsters. You got
Well,
everybody, even,
people don't quite know who I am yet, so I want to keep it that way for you know.
well, you can only do that for so long because it won't take very long. I bragged about you at the universe, and you don't get guys with that much density and that much just body mass up there like that. You got people like Bada and Kendall and all of those guys.
Mhm.
Gary Amlinger, who's
Another monster. Yeah,
just a monster and a really, really remarkable human being too. Gary is just the nicest guy in the world. Um, but those guys are like 195 and shredded. It's
yeah,
just like
yeah.
so. You're in that class, man. You eventually, your name is going to be right along there with them. You just a little more time in the game.
Sir, God willing. But
Yeah.
again, Malcolm, uh, thank you for joining me. I won't waste any more of your time. Where can people follow you?
Pretty much only on Instagram. It's Strength School Training on Instagram. Um, and that's pretty much the only social media I have. I'm old, so I don't do TikTok or anything like that. So yeah, just Instagram there.
Okay, awesome. And one last piece of advice for the next generation of athletes looking for a coach, what would it be?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say, um, again, I'm going to go back to the human piece. Picking somebody that values you as a person, and usually, almost uh, most of the time, I would say the best coaches, at least in our side of the sport, pretty much all do, right? So you almost can't go wrong with the Cliff Wilsons and the Brandon Kempters and Team 3DMJs and Pete Fish and all of those guys. I mean, they're all just great humans, but people who look at you not as a data point or a dollar sign, but as a human. Um, because at the end of the day, again, this is a part of our life. And for, many of us, a huge part of our life, but it is not our lives, exclusively. And so we want someone who's going to obviously prioritize your result, but not in a way that's going to ostracize you from real life. So find somebody who treats you like a person and not just uh, an athlete on a roster.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, man. All right. Well, appreciate you joining me, and we'll talk to you later, man.
Hey man, I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on.
100%. Take care.
All right, you too, man.